Britain currently has a Chamber of Parliament with more members than the House of Commons, and none of them were elected to it by the public. At the time of recording, Parliament lists 771 members of the House of Lords, 747 life peers, and 24 bishops. There is, however, one important change from the House of Lords many people remember. The hereditary peers have gone. On the 29th of April 2026, the remaining right to sit and vote in the Lords simply because someone inherited a peerage came to an end. So the Chamber is no longer partly hereditary, but it is still overwhelmingly unelected. And yet this unelected Chamber helps make laws, questions ministers, investigates government policy, and can force governments to rewrite legislation. So, what does the House of Lords actually do? And perhaps more importantly, if the Commons is elected, why does Britain need another chamber at all? The United Kingdom Parliament has two chambers. The House of Commons contains 650 elected MPs. The House of Lords is the second chamber. The crucial difference is democratic authority. A government survives because it can command the confidence of the House of Commons. It does not need to win a confidence vote in the Lords in order to remain in office. That gives the Commons political primacy. The Lords has influence, but it does not normally decide who governs Britain. Most members of the Lords are life peers. They are formally appointed by the King, normally following political nominations or recommendations made through the House of Lords Appointments Commission. The Appointments Commission recommends non-party political peers, usually known as crossbenchers, and vets life peer nominations for propriety. The Chamber also includes Lords Spiritual, Senior Church of England bishops. The legal maximum is 26, although vacancies mean the number actually sitting can be lower. So, the modern House of Lords is a mixture of political politicians, independents, former public servants, academics, doctors, lawyers, business figures, campaigners, trade unionists, and bishops. It is less a mirror of the electorate than a very large committee of people Britain has accumulated over several decades. That sounds unusual. It is. But its unusual composition is also central to the job it performs. The most important day-to-day role of the Lords is legislative scrutiny. A bill normally has to pass through both houses before it can receive royal assent and become law. The Lords debates the principle of a bill, examines it clause by clause, proposes amendments, and then gives the government another chance to explain why the wording says what it says. This is where the Chamber can be useful. Governments usually control the timetable in the Commons and, if they have a reliable majority, can normally get their legislation through. The Lords is less predictable. The government may not have anything resembling a majority there. Crossbenchers do not automatically support either side. Party discipline is often looser. Former ministers may decide that retirement has liberated them from the exciting career opportunity of agreeing with the whips. That means ministers sometimes have to negotiate. The Lords may identify unclear drafting, unintended consequences, excessive ministerial powers, or problems that received little attention in the Commons. If it amends a bill, that bill goes back to MPs. The Commons can accept the change, reject it, or offer another version. The bill can then return to the Lords. This is parliamentary ping-pong. It sounds like a light recreational activity. In practice, it can involve several rounds of constitutional disagreement conducted through amendments long enough to ruin an otherwise pleasant evening. But the point is important. The Lords does not simply say yes or no. Its most effective power is often to make the government think again. Usually, not forever. The elected Commons has the stronger democratic claim, and the Constitution reflects that. Under the Parliament Acts of 1911 and 1949, most public bills that begin in the Commons can eventually become law without the agreement of the Lords if the statutory conditions are met. The Lords can delay. It can amend. It can make the political cost of a proposal much higher, but in most cases it cannot permanently veto the elected House. Money bills are even more restricted because taxation and public spending are primarily matters for the Commons. There are also conventions. The Salisbury-Addison Convention says the Lords should not normally block legislation implementing a clear commitment from the governing party's election manifesto. None of this makes the Lords powerless. Delay can matter enormously. A government may compromise because it wants legislation passed quickly. A Lord's defeat can reveal that a proposal has attracted concern beyond the usual party battle. Amendments can give MPs another opportunity to rebel. And when ministers are forced to explain the same controversial clause for the fourth time, enthusiasm for defending it can begin to resemble enthusiasm for a dental appointment. The Lords, therefore, has a strange kind of power. It can often slow the government down, it can embarrass it, it can improve its legislation, but it cannot normally replace the democratic authority of the Commons. The Lords is not only a law-revising machine, it also questions ministers. Every sitting day includes oral questions to the government. Peers can submit written questions, hold debates, and challenge ministers on policy. This matters because some government ministers are themselves members of the Lords. Others are represented there by departmental spokespeople. The Chamber can also draw on specialist experience. A former ambassador can interrogate foreign policy. A doctor can examine health reform. A retired military officer can challenge defence planning. A constitutional lawyer can ask whether a minister has quietly awarded themselves powers that would have made Henry VIII unusually cheerful. The weakness is obvious. Expertise is not representation. Knowing a great deal about a subject does not give someone democratic permissions to make decisions for everybody else. That tension runs through the entire House. Its defenders point to experience, its critics point to legitimacy. Both are describing something real. Some of the Lords' most important work happens in committees. Select committees investigate policy, take evidence from experts, question ministers, and publish reports. Other committees examine the Constitution, delegated powers, and secondary legislation. That sounds dry because occasionally it is extremely dry. But it matters. Modern governments often ask Parliament to approve broad laws and then fill in important details later through regulations. A committee asking whether ministers have been given too much power may not generate a viral clip. It can still be constitutionally important. Committee reports can expose weak evidence, identify unintended consequences, and create a detailed record that MPs, journalists, charities, and campaigners then use. Parliament is not only Prime Minister's questions. A surprising amount of democracy involves somebody reading page 184 of an explanatory memorandum so that the rest of us do not have to. Supporters of an appointed chamber make a reasonable argument. Election is good at creating democratic legitimacy. It is not always good at recruiting every kind of expertise. A leading scientist, surgeon, judge, military commander, or charity leader may have useful experience, but no desire to spend 6 weeks knocking on doors in a marginal constituency while somebody asks why the council has not emptied a bin. Appointment can bring those people into Parliament. Life peers also do not have to win re-selection or fight another election. That can make them more willing to challenge their own party or take positions that are unpopular in the short term. Crossbenchers add another element because they are not formally part of government or opposition, and the current numbers show why governments cannot simply treat the Lords like another controlled parliamentary majority. At the time of recording, no party comes close to controlling the chamber on its own. That can create independence. It can also create an enormous legislature with no clear democratic mandate and no fixed size, which brings us to the problem. The simplest criticism of the Lords is difficult to answer. People who help make laws are not chosen by the people who must obey those laws. The public cannot vote a life peer out at the next general election. Prime ministers can recommend political appointments. Party balance can be changed by creating more peerages. Membership can last for decades, and the Church of England still has reserved places in the legislature. The hereditary principle made this criticism even harder to defend. That part has now changed. The House of Lords Hereditary Peers Act 2026 ended the right of the remaining hereditary peers to sit and vote by inheritance at the end of the 2024 to 2026 parliamentary session. That is a significant reform. It is also not the end of Lord's reform. The larger argument remains: should Britain retain an appointed chamber? Should members have fixed terms? Should there be a retirement age or participation requirement? Should the chamber be smaller? Should regions and nations have guaranteed representation? Or should the Lords eventually be replaced by an elected second chamber? Every answer creates another question. A fully elected upper house would have democratic legitimacy. But if both houses were elected, what happens when they disagree? The Commons currently has the stronger mandate because it is the elected chamber. Give the second chamber its own electoral mandate, and it might reasonably ask why it should always back down. And has spent more than a century discovering that House of Lords reform is much easier to announce than to finish. The furniture has moved again in 2026. The room has not been completely redesigned. So, what does the House of Lords actually do? It revises legislation, it proposes amendments, it questions ministers, it investigates policy through specialist committees, it delays some laws and forces governments to justify themselves. And because governments do not normally control it, the Lords can sometimes scrutinise legislation more freely than the Commons. But it has clear limits. The Commons normally has the final say because MPs are elected, and that is the central contradiction of the modern House of Lords. Its unelected nature can give it independence, experience, and specialist knowledge. Its unelected nature is also the reason its authority is limited, and its legitimacy is constantly questioned. The abolition of hereditary membership in 2026 removed one of the strangest surviving features of the old system. It did not answer the bigger question. How should a modern democracy design a second chamber that is powerful enough to matter, independent enough to scrutinise, but legitimate enough to deserve that power? That argument is not finished. It has simply moved on to the next stage. And that creates the obvious follow-up. If the House of Lords can delay a government, amend its bills, and defeat ministers, can it ever actually stop a government from getting what it wants? That is the question for a future politics brief. You can also watch my video on how Britain can change Prime Minister without a general election, another part of the Constitution that works rather differently from how it often appears. This has been the Nelson Brief, the context behind the story.